All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I've been told there's two mic runners in the back, so if you have anything to say, please wait until they get to you. I think you can just put up your hand and they'll come over. So this is the task intelligence breakout. I didn't add the doing more with less part, so I'm not really sure what that means. But, but basically, it's about tasks as a way to sort of represent what we do, and tasks are obviously extremely important. Tasks are defined as pieces of work in the range and scope, right? It's from like extremely small-scale things like an email, for example, all the way up to very broad and large-scale things like trying to plan an event. Tasks are extremely important, obviously. They span kind of everything that we do. Task intelligence is largely about technology and experiences to sort of extract, understand, and support the completion of tasks, right? So when we're talking about task intelligence this afternoon, that's kind of what we're talking about. You know, and task intelligence forms part of lots of different applications, ranging from digital assistance, productivity applications, and so on. I don't expect you to read all the text here. That's not the point. It's more just to show the breadth of different things that we think about when we're talking about task intelligence, right? So it ranges from task extraction, task understanding, ways to support tasks, progress over time, and also how do you evaluate support for tasks as well. We've done a few pieces of work in this area. I just wanted to draw your attention to them. So we've looked at things like trying to estimate how long a task will take you. So based on the text of the task as input, can we predict the amount of time that you may need to block to complete that task? Right, that's sort of one application there. We've explored contextual information around tasks, task taxonomies, and there's been a bunch of work in tasks in a lot of different places as well, obviously. And lately we've been looking at can we predict when a task is completed, right? So can we infer from what you do after you start the task or create the task, can we infer that the task has already been done? Tasks appear in a lot of different Microsoft products as well. These range from Cortana to Outlook, Bing, Project Planner, To Do, Azure. They're, you know, and these are just some examples that I picked based on who we have here to speak to us. So, I mean, I guess the point is that tasks are everywhere. We do also have a partnership with academia around tasks as well. A couple of years ago, we started this venture called the Cortana Intelligence Institute, which is a targeted partnership we have with RMIT, where we sponsor research there around tasks, right? So that's started a couple of years ago. It's going to conclude in September, October of this year. And there, the emphasis is really on tracking tasks over time, right? So can we predict how far into a task a person is? And we'll learn more during the panel. Speaking of the panel, I would like to introduce the panelists. I don't know if you guys would like to come up and sit here? Would that be, or do you want to sit there? It's up to you. Can you sit up here? It'd be good, actually, yeah. Make a decision, right? So we have 5 really fantastic panelists from a range of different places. And each of them is going to speak to you in a bit to sort of introduce themselves and what they do and their backgrounds and so on. Flora is an associate professor at RMIT in Australia. She's one of the key partners in our Cortana Intelligence Institute collaboration. Keith is a general manager for Azure developers services. Caitlin's a principal PM on To-Do. Shree's a principal PM in Bing. And Howard's a partner GPM on Project and Planner. So there's a broad range of expertise here. Lots of different Microsoft products, plus some external perspective as well. Just a little bit about how we're going to structure the rest of the time. So we'll do a panelist round robin, where each panelist will speak for a little bit of time about their background, tasks as it pertains to that. Then we'll have some discussion between the panelists and Q&A with you all. So we should just go ahead and get started. I think I should probably go in this order. So Flora, would you like to start?
Sure.
Thanks.
If you feel like sitting down.
It's kind of awkward, yeah. Please. Yeah, maybe wait until the Q&A, then, yeah, it's probably better. God, I'll learn as you go here, right? Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak in this session, Ryan. So today I'll talk about context and behavior-aware task assistant. So how do you actually develop a task assistant that is aware of the user's context and behaviors? And I'm from the Center for Information Discovery and Data Analytics at RMIT University. If any of you don't know where it is, it's actually in Melbourne, Australia. It's in the southern hemisphere. And people keep asking me, how long did it take for me to fly here? So maybe I just tell you that it took me, including all the transit, well, just under 20 hours, so it's not too bad. Because last week when I was in London, it took me about 22 hours. We also, I'm also one of the co-investigators of Cortana Intelligence Institute, and you'll learn more about this later. So I just have to tell Ryan that I'm sorry, I don't think I'll be able to finish within 5 to 10 minutes. It might be between 10 to 15 minutes.
That's fine.
So I'll start with this. So an overwhelmed user, Ian, who is one of the participants in our data collection, said this: I'm inundated with microtasks every day. Look at my phone with all these notifications. I'm sorry, emails. Is your mic on? Oops. It wasn't, sorry. Now, can you hear me? All right, okay. Right, so I'm inundated with microtasks every day. Look at my phone with all these notifications, emails, texts, chat, and appointment reminders. I wish there's a way to aggregate and help me to prioritize them. So this was one of the real comments from our participants. So how many of you can identify yourself with this? Great, so me too. Now the question is, if you and I are going to learn more about people's tasks and being able to generate only notifications and recommendations that are useful to users, how do we actually do this? How do we generate relevant, timely, and useful task notification and recommendation that will be really helpful for for the users. I think a lot of you in this room have been working on the search problems, right? So basically, a lot of the tasks in information behavior, trying to give results to when people looking for information, is almost perhaps solved, right? So when you actually say, when people trying to search for something, you always try to infer the intent. Now the thing is, this information behavior these days are very much complex because people looking for information at different contexts. They might be going through different apps while completing their tasks. And they might be doing this at the comfort of their sofa at home. And this might be a personal task. This might be a work task. We don't know. In fact, I did something. I tried to do some comments on my students' work on my phone last night in the hotel room, and it looked like this. It was actually a work task. Sometimes very hard to say whether this is a personal or work task. Well, somebody might be looking for information while they're in a shopping mall. And this could be a mom who's got a task that I need to find new shoes for my son before the school starts. So that's a task. And the information behavior, again, is quite different, where you have an intent on looking at this, and it may not be a search activity, but it's actually going through different comparison websites. But somebody working on a task could look like this too. So the context is, this user might be, sitting in their office, juggling through tasks on multiple devices, and in front of him might be Azure DevOps, or maybe it could be a planner while actually communicating with his project teams on the phone. So right now, what tasks look like is very complex. And understanding this is not an easy challenge. So I said to Ryan, you're going to be featured in my slide, and there you go. So Ryan recently had an article in ACM Communication that says, as a community, we need to invest in evolving search interaction to support the often underserved last mile in search interaction, and that is task completion. So it is very hard to get there, to understand when do you know that somebody is doing a certain task and that task has completed. Now, for me, understanding task behaviors has a lot of facets to it. First, if you're trying to develop a task assistant that can automatically understand what task users are doing right now, where do you start? Where do you get the signals from? You might have these, your information being in Microsoft. You got lots of information from your productivity suites. You've got the Office 365, or the emails data and all that. But there's a lot more information beyond that. People asking you requests, but and as I said before, you might be in different places. And how do you know if somebody's progressing a certain task? And it's very important as well that a task assistant needs to celebrate help to celebrate a milestone that's achieved, so task completion. Now, a lot of my work, even before I was working with task understanding, just the last 2 years, my research has been mainly on context and behavior modeling. So I'm very much interested in understanding user behaviors and how they relate to multiple different contexts they might be in. And this is done through user-centric sensing. So what I mean by user-centric sensing is basically, that IoT data and everything is all sensed about our life, and smartphone has a lot of sensors in them. And basically, can we understand people's activities? Can we understand what users do and their activities when they go about their daily life? Maybe as they start the day, do they start by dropping their kids in the childcare or nursery or in school before trying to get a car park in a train station before commuting to downtown for work? And then maybe they go through meetings after meetings after meetings, and then they might need to have a project client meeting somewhere else. It may not be at that workplace. So try to understand these physical movements and behaviors from mobility behaviors to infer what looks like user mobility behaviors relating to tasks. But on top of that, another source of user-centric sensing data are social media data. So we know, for example, when people checking in, because every morning I just have to grab my coffee, then I know that is part of regular tasks. And these social media data actually give you semantic. This give you content and semantic into the user behaviors. Now, where do you start with all this behavioral data? It's very important to always start by understanding and recognizing context, because context characterizes the situation of a user. And context itself is a strong influence for users for taking decisions. So I'll just give you an example. When you get an incoming call, these days, maybe this is rare, right? You might be getting notifications about on your WhatsApp or your Teams. Now, what would user do with it? This is very important. In order for us to understand user behavior, we need to know the context. Is this person in a meeting? If I'm in a meeting, will this user answer the phone? Well, it depends on the social relationship. If it's my mom who calls, and I'm expecting her call because she's looking after my kids, then I might be excusing myself from the meeting and I have to leave. But if it's in completely unknown calls, I might actually ignore it. And in some of the actual call log studies we've been studying, we look at behavioral, very strong signals between context and behaviors. So even, for example, if somebody had their boss calling, sometimes completely ignored. So that's why it's very important to understand how context, in what certain context, users will, how will user respond to all these notifications? And that's actually really largely dependent on the context. And it's been a couple of years. We've been studying heterogeneous data sources to understand all these different contexts and behaviors. Now, I want to emphasize again that really context can reflect on different behaviors of users when, whether or not they're doing a certain task and the type of task they do. So just giving you another example. Now, what about indoor behavior activities in a shopping mall? So this is completely different scenario. When people go to mall, what do? What sort of tasks they might do? Can I ask you some answers from the audience? Eating, good. What else? Shopping, that's obvious. Hanging out.
Classroom.
Hey?
Classroom.
Okay, what else? Anyone? What? Meeting friends, yep. There are actually a lot of instances of meetings, project meetings in shopping malls. And apparently, there's also tasks of caring, like parents or carers with young kids, when they just want to shut off and let the kids just run around in the indoor playground, and they can actually then work on their email at least. So there are a lot of cases like this. Now, so we did a project with Westfield. This was completed in 2017. It was a large-scale indoor movement and information behavior tracking. We had these Wi-Fi access logs for more than 1 year. We also have the content data, so we also had access to the ISP logs of more than 120,000 anonymized users of the public Wi-Fi. It was a large mall in the city, Sydney, so it has more than 7 stories. And what we found out is we actually come up with these terms of cyber physical social context. These cyber physical social contexts will largely determine how we understand user behaviors. Just giving you an example here. So when somebody is when somebody wanting to buy and searching for Hawaiianas, if you're not sure what is Hawaiianas, so those are Hawaiianas, and the context when they issue the search queries are very similar to the context of the shopping mall, so where they are at in the access point. So they're very close to the shoe stores. So this is, of course, not surprising. But the thing is, when we start mapping, when we start mapping movement flows across floors, so the darker colors showing the higher floors, you can see, for example, some strange, very quick movement. I'm sorry, I think the arrow didn't point correctly, but there are movements, for example, from level 1 to level 5 directly. Why would people move directly to level 5 from level 1, right? So if you haven't been to Sydney, level 5 is the food court. So you've got the shortest path possible from the ground floor to level 5. And the cyber content during this is also very specific to work-related tasks. So they might be doing meetings, they might be on their productivity apps while they're sitting in the food court. So we can actually recognize tasks when we combine cyber, physical, and social context. Social context means who they are at. And therefore, what we did further was, these public Wi-Fi data are not annotated, so it's very hard to be able to validate anything. So that's why we then released a survey to the public Wi-Fi users. We could actually then analyze if their cyber, physical, social behaviors, using those traits from cyber, physical, social behaviors in their Wi-Fi logs can reflect on the demographic data, and apparently they're very strongly correlated. So what we use with this data, then we can then come up with some kind of like tripartite recommendation of where people will be interested in, or locations they might be interested in, or maybe some items or products they might be interested in the mall. Now, another project I'd like to mention before I mention the Cortana Intelligence Institute is we've also done some work on physical and social sensing at work for workplace analytics. So we know that research on hot desking hasn't been quite positive. So, but there's not much evidence about that. So what we did with Arab was we instrumented some of the workers carrying around our mobile sensing app, and we also put some indoor sensors, and we collect also their project data. So the background data and project data, and we want to be able to see if we can infer how much a worker could concentrate depending on multiple factors, including whether how many projects they have right now, whether they actually sit at their preferred seat, or they just sit in a place where, because everyone else has taken his favorite seat, then I have to use an existing other seat. Or and there's a lot of other data we collect, including CO2, which means air quality. And we've done some analysis where apparently concentration, the perceived concentration reported by the user really has a strong correlation with the number of meetings. When there are more meetings, the less they can concentrate. And apparently, although the reported concentration, they actually say, well, CO2 or air quality and temperature doesn't have any impact on my concentration. In fact, when we look at the data, it has a very strong relationship. And when they actually sit at the preferred zones, they actually also have a better productivity, perceived productivity. So yeah, I'm not going to talk more about that. Now, when you look at these two data sets that I've been talking about, the mall and this workplace, it's so very specific to those two buildings. Now, the challenge is how do we recognize task behaviors in daily life from people that can work at multiple places, not just Microsoft, not just universities, but maybe people who are working in marketing agencies, people who are working in all kind of professional roles, really. So that's a really challenging thing. And another challenge is there's no data set that will give you. There's a lot of data on. You've been collecting a lot of data on the online activities, for example, and email activities, project activities. And also there's another group on ubiquitous computing. I come from ubiquitous computing research field, collecting a lot of mobile sensing data, but we don't have the task annotations, and this is what we need. So how do we construct such a data set for task intelligence? And this is why the Microsoft RMIT Cortana Intelligence Institute was launched. So Ryan, just a correction, it was launched last year, February 2018. So it wasn't that long ago. This is just a bit more than a year ago. And the main aim of CII was to build a benchmark data set for task behaviors. Now, how do we do that? First, we need to collect rich annotations of what people do. And we do that through experience sampling and end-of-day survey. So we're collecting task annotations, the states and the progress of every task, and the activities, the sub-activities of those tasks. And while we do that, we continuously log the cyber, physical, and social signals. So again, what is the cyber, physical, social? So this cyber signals means the online activities, including the browse web domain, app category, app usage time, the physical signals, including movement, and social, including basically calendar information, whether somebody's busy in a meeting and all that. Now, what makes it harder though? The existing categorization of tasks are very broad, according to American Time Use Survey. So the American Time Use Survey has these taxonomy of tasks: personal tasks, work-related tasks, social exercise, entertainment, caring, and civil obligations. But work-related tasks has no subcategory, while everything else has subcategory. So this is why then before we started the logging, we sent out a survey to more than 400 participants in English-speaking countries, so that includes US. And the outcome is a new work task taxonomy. So this was published in CHEER. So the subcategory, and we call this as microtasks, include communication, documentation, planning, and so on. You can see the list there. Now that we've come up with this way of annotating tasks, we then collected data from a range of professionals and non-professionals. So non-professional means students. And this is what makes the data unique as well, because a lot of data has been collected mainly on students. So, and what makes it challenging is we need to collect data. We're challenging ourselves that we want to collect data over 4 weeks, so we can then start observing long-term behaviors on longer-term behaviors on tasks. And of course, to get someone on a manager level, a business owner, to be able to be involved, and then we actually have a weekly meeting every week to actually make sure the data that we're collecting, the annotation we're collecting actually makes sense. So there's a lot of work on that part as well in weekly meetings. So we actually pay the participants. I'll tell you more later about it if you're interested, how much we have to pay the participants to keep them engaged over 4 weeks. So what do we get? In fact, before I go there, we did this over 7 batches, and we've just completed the data collection last month. So because every time we do this, because of the weekly meetings, we can only onboard 10 maximum because of the number of people that are available to do the interview every week. So we did this over 12 months data collection. And the behavior logs, we've got more than nearly 200 row features. I need to get that correct. So nearly 200 row features, including calendar events, movement data. So we even get the transport heat maps, so where they are likely to depart. Even potentially, we can learn their transport modes. Important locations in this person's life, cyber data, including background and foreground app and mobile, as well as on desktop if they install the application on their desktop or laptop, if their work allows for it. Then we'll be able to know if, let's say, somebody's on Microsoft Word or if somebody's on project, we'll be able to get that. And if they also install the browser plugin, then we'll also be able to collect the websites. Now, along with that, there's a lot of sensor data channels, including physical activity, Wi-Fi, cell tower, and all that. So, and the reported task data, there are some partial snapshot of that. For example, then somebody report their task let's say I'm investigating on email this project A, or I'm looking compliance gap analysis. So you've got a lot of, we haven't done any NLP at all on this data at all. So it's pretty noisy. So, and along with that, people actually report whether they think each of these tasks require cyber or physical or social context. And we did some initial analysis on the data as well. We found that median task duration is just about half an hour, except personal tasks. They're much shorter. Work-related task participants, only the work ones. You can see across the users, work-related tasks has different duration. So that means and these are people from completely different work domains. So that means work tasks are very personalized. You cannot really learn one model and train it across other users, especially if they're from different disciplines or they're from different industry. And when we look at the long tail, a lot of this long tail consists of the microtasks related to caring, personal and social exercise and entertainment. And when we look at the reported cyber-physical social context that are required during tasks, we found that a lot of these, especially work-related tasks, actually require cyber-physical social context. So you can see the dark blue ones are basically the number of tasks where they think requiring cyber-physical social context. And if you look at this, for example, a lot of the work done here, for example, in Microsoft, are cyber only. If you look at the aggregate of this, that will be just representing maybe a quarter of the tasks. So that's why it's very important to be able to collect and understand behavior from different signals. Because I don't have much more time, I'll skip this. Some of the initial analysis that we did. Basically, it also shows that when we combine these signals, cyber, physical, social, we can identify tasks better. Still a long way to go because we still have misclassified tasks. I don't have time to talk about that. We also look at feature importance analysis across different tasks. Some initial insights are, for example, we could look at communication related tasks really can be some of the important features including social signals. And this is common sense, of course. Some of these, like when you move, you can actually recognize travel tasks and all those things. There are more detailed findings to come, and I'm happy to share more as well in the workshop this Friday. And there's still a lot more to be done. So we need to recognize task intent, recognize task progress from these long-term tasks, and how can we even analyze team-based tasks? So thank you.
Hello, my name is Keith Ballinger. I'm the general manager for Microsoft's Developer Services organization. I won't use slides. I'll just talk very briefly so we can get through the other participants as well. Generally speaking, in Developer Services, we focus less on the individual tasks and work that a developer is doing while coding and creating a feature, those kinds of things. It's important. But it's generally important because we're trying to find ways to build tools and technology to automate what we're trying to do. And that kind of goes to the heart of what we're trying to do with developer services, which is essentially for both Microsoft's own engineers and for all of the what we call third-party engineers in the world. We're trying to build those services that make them more successful and more productive. What that means, though, in practice is it's far less about helping someone type faster, so to speak. In general, developers, especially professionals who've been at it a while, find ways to kind of create context, create flow. They lock themselves in the room. They do the things necessary to kind of hammer out a feature. So one of the areas that we focus a lot on is what does it mean for a team to complete work? And in particular, if you think of a task, for instance, as a particular bug that needs to be fixed or a feature that you want to ship in your service or in a mobile application or even the launch of a new product, a team needs to work together to do that. And there's a lot of different techniques that you can look at in order to make a team more effective. And in general, as you notice, one of the products I owned is called Azure DevOps. the kind of the DevOps world is a set of tools, technologies, and really like a kind of a philosophy of process around how you can shape a team to do certain things and how you can get them to work more closely together. A lot of that comes from various management science from the 20th century. So for instance, Elihu Goldblatt's theory of constraints is around taking any particular system, and he was looking at manufacturing systems in the 70s, and looking at optimizing any particular step in a manufacturing process is generally useless, and you're just creating waste, and you're just piling up inventory, which is a real deal killer in the manufacturing world, unless you're optimizing the part of the process, the task that is actually a bottleneck. And the theory of constraints is completely focused on this idea of reducing waste and reducing inventory in order by optimizing, finding your biggest bottleneck and fixing that. And for whatever reason, when explained, it sounds quite normal, but if you look at how software engineers in particular work in teams, this can still be a problem, where a developer may want to optimize a part of their process, or a team may want to optimize a part of their process, but they're missing the forest for the trees, in that, again, you can code as fast as you want. We could put all developers through typing school and make sure they all can type 100 words a minute. It doesn't really matter whether you type 100 words a minute or you type 1 word a minute as a developer. That's not where the bottleneck is. And so that kind of leads to the other area of interest with me and my team is, well, what does it mean to reduce waste, right? Using that manufacturing term. What does it mean to have piled up inventory? And in the world of services today and apps and things like that, what it generally comes down to is the fact that how quickly you ship something doesn't matter. How quickly you fix a bug for a user or ship a new feature doesn't matter if no one's using it, and if you actually haven't solved the customer's problem. So a lot of our focus has been around how do we spend more time understanding what the actual customer problem is and what the value that the customer needs to have is, and then once we know that, we know we can ship the right thing. And this becomes very interesting when you think about the idea of tasks and assistants that help you with tasks. In my world of development, there are certainly some great examples of where we can help developers in doing what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. In particular, I think there's a lot to do around, say, for instance, code review and helping people make more intelligent decisions around the code they just wrote and is it really good. And there's certainly a lot of automation we can do. If you look back 20 years ago, when I was a developer 20 years ago, there were production systems I was working on where I would literally take a floppy disk and I would take it from my computer to a server somewhere, and then I would load new code in. And that world's gone. Today, everything is automated. And for the most part, developers are already really good at this. They're good at automating things that are drudgery, that are very repetitive. In fact, you could really look at the entire software industry as just a progression of automating more and more things that are otherwise manual tasks that people would have to do. Which leaves us to this place where it really becomes, well, if you want to be innovative and you want to be a company or a team that is outperforming your competitors, you have to kind of focus much more on rethinking what the task is. And the task goes away from being, here's a feature that I need to code and then deploy to a server, to being, I have a customer problem that aligns with what my business is trying to solve, and therefore trying to break through with what that means. And in those cases, oftentimes, the real bottleneck and the place where the most help is needed is in reducing the risk and uncertainty of, is the code you're about to write actually useful to anybody? And so with that, we'll pass it off to the next person. All right, thanks.
Put your original slide. You got the names.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Hart. I work on the Microsoft To-Do team. More generally, we have the ecosystem of tasks, lists, and reminders at Microsoft. It might be Outlook tasks, where Cortana reminders are stored. It's an experience that we're pretty proud of, but we're continuing to improve. We've been looking a lot lately at, and by the way, excellent selection of panelists, because these are all, like, I'm just so thrilled at the topics that we're talking about today. These are all the things that keep me up at night. We're trying to help people to do more and to be able to achieve more. And I guess I would say more the latter. Not do more tasks, not just get through your to-do list, but actually to be able to end the day feeling accomplished. And that requires a lot. It requires, first of all, you to have a sense for everything that you have to do, a collection of everything. We aim to serve that by having a collection in the ecosystem that we support, all of your tasks that you capture in an explicit to-do list. Show of hands, how many keep a to-do list in a digital app? Yeah, pretty common. Piece of paper? Yeah, you're not alone. It's the tasks that we capture explicitly, people emailing themselves tasks, emailing themselves reminders. A lot of tasks come in through communication, and often tasks are just following up on communication channels. Email is not a great to-do list. It's very reactive, right? You just wind up playing whack-a-mole with incoming things all day. And it's even worse now that we have more chat channels, and communication becoming fragmented means I have to follow up on communication tasks from everywhere. But that's not the end of it. I have to save other things that I need to follow up on. I have documents that I need to finish, or big projects or goals, and I need to capture those somehow. So I have to get a sense for everything that I need to collect. We also have tasks that are assigned, right? Assigned through projects, through any sort of team task tracking experience, either digitally or the post-it notes that you have for tracking what assignments you have out of your team meeting this week, right? So having a sense for everything that you have to do is only step one. We also are really concerned about helping people get an actionable plan to feel accomplished at the end of the day. Not just to do all those tasks, but to be able to have the healthy habits of being intentional about how you spend your time to be able to feel like you did something. I'll paint a picture of 2 different days. This is me a lot of days, maybe it's familiar. You start the day, phone in hand, trying to figure out what's up for the day, coffee in the other, trying to figure out like, oh, somebody's emailing me, I'll follow up on that when I get to my desk. And then maybe come in, try to start start a document, start something that requires individual effort. Go off to another meeting, maybe have some follow-ups that you have to take care of, and then come back to a project, and then come back to emails, and then come back to, and you get chat messages, and then it sort of gets kind of more of reactive, more of a fragmented set of things that you just have to react to throughout the day. I don't end those days feeling very great about what I do. I'm feeling very accomplished. It feels like I'm just battling things. Another type of day, one that I would hope more people could have, and I feel really accomplished at the end of these days, know exactly my goal for the day, right? Like start the day knowing what the meaningful thing is that you can accomplish. The 1 to 3, 3 to 5, whatever tasks that are actually actionable today, and they are going to get done, and spend some focus time on that. And then maybe go off and do the collaborative exercises to get tasks from other situations, and know that you won't forget them. Capture them in a way that you won't forget them, and that you're going to follow up on them. And then actually get to a different type of task time, a time where you can just tick off a whole lot of things, right? Like the micro productivity session that we were in, or some of us were in earlier today, getting lots of little things done, get that little energy boost, right? Get a lot of little things that are very actionable and require a different type of focus. This kind of day doesn't just come by accident. It comes from intentional planning, and it's hard. It's really hard. I was just having dinner earlier this week with a friend whose kid is going off to college, and he was talking about how he was struggling with just developing the executive functioning skills to take a big project, right? Like a thing I have to do, a huge deadline or something, and know that there are intermediary steps. The deadline to really get started, otherwise I'm in trouble. The deadline to produce the first draft. The things that I have to do to be able to accomplish what I need and not be rushed. These are the skills that are required for planning my day, for estimating the time that something will take. And these are all things that can be assisted, especially with computers being able to estimate task duration, but it doesn't come in isolation. It's hard to estimate tasks in isolation. Tasks are more than tasks. They are those things. They come with goals. They come with the full context of a project that they relate to. And so I want to be able to support people in those healthy daily habits, those things where at the beginning of the day, they can come up with a plan, they can see what the most meaningful things are for them to focus on today, and they actually have the tools support them in doing that.
Hello? All right, that's loud. Hi, my name is Shri. I work in Bing. Specifically, I work in whole page organization and answers and entities, as we call in our internal lingo. What it means essentially is, I think from a search standpoint, we are always trying to solve micro tasks, as the word has been used, or sometimes that is the thing you're doing. Search in many ways, I think we have evolved to the speed of things, and so both sides, both the user and us as a search engine, live like no tomorrow, which means the user types in a small query text to us, like weather, and they say, give it to me and I'm done. And from our side, we're like, oh, you said weather? Okay, I just need to give you something in a few milliseconds, and that's it. We generally don't are in the habit of worrying about, oh, what were you asking the weather about? Are you thinking about what to wear today? You have a picnic plan? Like, what is the larger theme that you're asking? So historically speaking, search engines don't get that much context because nobody has time to tell all the context. And writing is effort. So in general, search has been started that way, but more and more we see it going towards getting other signals. So for example, if you say like homes for sale, of course it's a very big task. You're not going to buy the house online. You have been thinking about it, or you just heard a conversation, the market is hot, buy something soon. So what do we do with this? So the sessions are drawn out long for us, like buying a house. So we try to figure out what is the first way we can satisfy that current answer. So we always think in like, how can I give you the delight right now, right? So if I can bring you a better experience, I can hopefully say, okay, you got me a collection of homes, come back tomorrow, and then I can probably find you the next thing here. We try to hook the people in a sense of, once you say I'm looking for homes, you probably are curious about following if there's new homes coming in the market, because your task doesn't end with just homes. So there are these other ways the search engines are now trying to understand the user better so we can satisfy them tomorrow better. Now, something like Spider-Man, if you just search Spider-Man normally and you just give in the fictional character, everybody knows about it. But when you search today, you're probably looking for the movie that just came out. So we need to understand, you just said Spider-Man, I need to understand, okay, this is 2019, the movie has been released, there is a movie theater near you, it's 4 o'clock, so it better show me shows for 6 o'clock or after. So all of these implicit things, you just said Spider-Man, I need to figure all of this out and give you the best answer at the same time. So from a search standpoint, the tasks are evolving to understand as much signals as possible and bring together a better experience that satisfies pretty much not just, oh, you got the movie, I don't need the character, I already know the character. Here is the show times near you, here are the top theaters near you, not some random theater. So we are bringing together a better experience as we evolve tasks. And to push further, we are also now understanding the fundamental biases in queries. And bias is a very big thing today in the world of news and information. So when somebody says, is coffee good for me, right? So I'm really trying to say, give me all the good stuff about coffee. But the reason you typed that query in was you heard something that, there might be something bad about it. So we are trying to now understand the semantic behind it. Like, why did you say good for me? So we try to bring both sides now. So if you try like in your phones or laptops, is coffee good for me in Bing, you will see both the good and the bad sides of it. And that's because we are understanding behind why did you issue the query good. And good has two meanings, right? And lastly, in terms of like intelligence, we have, if you do an enterprise search, and I say like Simon's office, right? We historically would just be a web results coming for, I don't know what Simon's office means today. But now, because you're in an enterprise, we understand that, oh, there's a Simon you've been having a conversation with. You're probably meeting, we don't know that, but I can quickly pull up the office, a map, a layout, exactly point where it is. So like all of these signals implicit are coming together to push the experience forward. And if you think about it, it's all like adding intelligence. And again, living like no tomorrow, giving you in a few milliseconds the answers, but kind of pushing the boundaries of the web, or rather the text box, what you gave us in the text box, and advancing it. That's like my brief kind of intro, but happy to talk more, so I'll get off to Howard. Thank you.